What would you do if your dream home came with a nightmare neighbor who thought everything you owned was hers? In today's story, the protagonist's choice is a masterclass in how to handle it. My husband, Mark, and I are in our late 30s and child-free. For nearly a decade, we'd scrimped and saved every penny with a single goal in mind: moving to a tropical paradise. About 2 years ago, we finally took the plunge and moved to our dream location. It was everything we'd imagined. Unfortunately, housing here is incredibly expensive, with prices rivaling places like Hawaii. So all we could afford was half of a duplex. Still, it was beautiful, sitting right on the water with space for our boat. The only problem? The other half of the duplex was occupied by Brenda, her boyfriend Ricky, and her 3 children. To understand the situation, you need to know the layout. The entire duplex property was owned by an elderly gentleman who lived 2,000 miles away and rented out both units. The 2 sides were not symmetrical at all. We bought the larger unit, a 5-bedroom, 3-bath house. Our side came with 90% of the backyard, a beautiful gazebo, and about 150 feet of corner dockage. The other side, Brenda's side, was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath rental. It had a small patio, a tiny strip of backyard, and maybe 15 feet of dockage. According to the original rental leases, tenants were only entitled to their specific, designated backyards. However, there were no fences. So over the years, all the renters had just shared the entire space. The moment we closed on our house, Brenda tried to throw her weight around, insisting that they expected to continue having access to our entire yard. I tried to be reasonable. I told her that if she asked politely, we would try to accommodate her. She took this to mean she had a free pass to use our backyard whenever she pleased. The first major incident sealed her fate. One afternoon, Mark and I were relaxing outside with some drinks when a delivery truck pulled up and began setting up a giant, inflatable bounce house in our backyard. I walked over to Brenda and asked what on earth she thought she was doing. She casually informed me it was for her kid's birthday party. Then, she had the absolute audacity to tell me it was a family and friends only event, so Mark and I would need to stay inside our own house. Brenda made a critical miscalculation at that moment. She saw me as a pushover she could bully, completely unaware that this single, outrageous act of entitlement was the first nail in the coffin of her life in paradise. Not wanting to be the monster who ruins a little girl's birthday, I grit my teeth and told Brenda that after this party, she was to have zero access to our yard. Period. She just shrugged and went back to her party preparations. A few hours later, the situation escalated. A drunk party guest wandered right into our house, looking for the bathroom. We were stunned. I told him Brenda's unit was on the other side, and he looked confused. Oh, he slurred. Brenda said she owned the whole property and to use whichever bathroom was available. I pointed him toward Brenda's actual bathroom. And moments later, she came storming into my house, screaming. She yelled about how dare I make her look bad in front of her friends and how selfish we were for not even being able to spare one bathroom. She sneered that just the 2 of us didn't deserve all this space anyway. That was it. I told her to get the hell out of my house before I called the cops. She finally left in a huff, and the party broke up soon after. After that disaster, Mark and I decided we needed a permanent physical boundary. We were building a fence. And since we were already spending the money, we decided to go all out and upgrade our patio with a fire pit and an outdoor kitchen. While the contractor was on site for a consultation, nosy Brenda came over to investigate. The fence was going to be the last part of the project, so I kept my answers vague, just mentioning the patio update. I could see her face light up with glee. In her mind, what was ours was hers, and we were just giving her a free backyard upgrade. The day the workers began digging the post holes for the fence, Brenda came out screaming for them to stop. I calmly walked outside, told the crew to continue their work, and told Brenda to butt out. True to form, she called the cops. The resulting scene was almost comical. I explained to the officer that we were building a fence on our own property, and that her landlord, the actual owner of her unit, was fully aware of it. The officer gave Brenda a stern lecture about wasting police resources. I thought her head was going to explode from pure rage. She stomped back into her house and slammed her sliding glass door so hard I heard a distinct cracking sound. We finally had our fence. But the war was far from over. Soon after, Ricky entered the picture and proved to be just as terrible. He started throwing cigarette butts and empty beer cans over our new fence, claiming it was for disrespecting his woman. I never knew Paradise had trailer trash, but Ricky was the walking stereotype. He also had a 30-foot fishing boat. Of course, their side of the duplex only had about 15 feet of dock space. Not nearly enough. Since we had so much extra dockage, we rented out spots on a month-to-month basis. One of our renters had their boat tied up right on the property line. Brenda and Ricky decided they wanted that spot. While Mark and I were out of town, they posed as us, told our renter they had to be gone by the end of the month, and then parked Ricky's boat right there. I only found out weeks later when the renter left a scathing review on the rental site we used, saying we were rude and had gone back on a verbal agreement to let them stay for 3 more months. After a very confusing phone call with the former renter, I put 2 and 2 together. I called the police again. They arrived and told Brenda and Ricky to move the boat or it would be impounded. They started screaming that the boat was on their property. It wasn't. Then pivoted to arguing that no one can own the water, which is true, but a seawall is deeded property. At some point in the tirade, Ricky punched a police officer and was promptly arrested. This revealed Brenda and Ricky's greatest fatal flaw, their belief that they could bully and lie their way through any situation without consequence. An arrogance that would ultimately leave them with nothing. I felt so bad for the officers that I took them snacks the next day with a note apologizing for our neighbor drama. I eventually won a small claim suit against them for the lost rental income, though I never saw a dime of it. I managed to convince the original renters to come back by offering them a few months of free dockage. And now, for the moment you've been waiting for. With the market in a downturn, Mark and I had been looking for a way to reinvest our savings when a golden opportunity fell into our laps. Our duplex owner, the elderly gentleman who lived 2,000 miles away, was tired of managing the property from afar, largely because Brenda called him weekly to complain about every little thing. He needed cash and wanted to sell her unit. His only condition was that we had to let the poor single mom who has been his renter for 8 years finish out her lease, which was up in July. The chance to finally control our neighbors? It was a dream come true. We jumped on it. Since we didn't need a mortgage or a realtor, the entire deal closed in less than 2 weeks. We registered the property under an LLC, so Brenda was aware of a change in ownership. But she had no idea who her new landlord was. Until 8 days ago. I walked over to Brenda's house and knocked on the door. She answered with, "What the fuck do you want? Cunt?" I gave her my sweetest, most pleasant smile. I handed her a piece of paper with our LLC's information. Now her official landlord. "Just dropping this off," I said cheerfully. "Rent is due by Friday. But you can just hand me the check now if that's easier." I'd always heard descriptions of people's faces turning white with shock. But this was the first time I had ever actually seen it. The color drained from her face. Her jaw went slack. And her eyes darted from the paper to my smiling face. The horrifying realization slowly dawning on her. I told her we would be honoring her lease until the end of July. But she'd better make other plans after that. Because we intended to remodel before our next tenants moved in. Bye. Bitch. I felt on top of the world. But as one person later pointed out online, I had set myself up for some major headaches. They astutely predicted she wouldn't pay rent and would completely trash the place. Why would she care? It's not like I could just kick her out. Right? That person's prediction, unfortunately, would turn out to be eerily accurate. I thought I had one. But Brenda's sense of entitlement, now curdled into pure spite, was about to collide with a global crisis, creating a perfect storm of misery I never saw coming. We served her a 30-day notice that we would not be renewing the lease. But then, the world shut down. Due to the COVID-19 eviction moratoriums, we couldn't legally make her leave. So, long story short, Brenda and her family stayed, paying no rent at all. She was extra smug about it, intentionally playing loud music and tossing her trash everywhere. The only silver lining was a massive fight between her and Ricky that ended with him getting arrested again. He never came back. The situation was a nightmare. We had planned to remodel the unit for my elderly parents. My dad desperately needed shoulder surgery and my mom now needed a walker. And driving 2 hours a day to care for them was becoming exhausting. But they wanted their own space and wouldn't live on our side with us. We were stuck. Angry. And exhausted. Then, in October, life took a very strange turn. Brenda's mother, Sharon, came to live with her after her own landlord chose not to renew her lease. And Sharon was an angel. She was absolutely mortified by her daughter's and grandchildren's behavior. Sharon was a tough lady. And she immediately started cleaning house. Both literally and figuratively. The kids became much better behaved. And Brenda began stomping around like a sullen teenager who'd just been grounded. Sharon and I started sharing drinks in the backyard every few days. We started baking together on weekends. For Thanksgiving and Christmas. Since no one was traveling, we made a huge feast and set up tables and games outside. It was a genuinely wonderful time. And even Brenda managed to be pleasant. I tried to tell Sharon not to worry about the rent. But she insisted on paying. So I lied and told her a much lower amount. Just enough to cover taxes and insurance. And we drew up a new month-to-month lease. The situation became surprisingly pleasant. And I found myself in no hurry for them to leave. In the end, the best revenge wasn't some dramatic lawsuit. As someone commented on my story, I didn't sue her for thousands of dollars. Oh no. I just smiled sweetly and bought her house. It shows that sometimes the most chaotic situations resolve in the most unexpected ways. And that a little bit of kindness can lead to a peace you never thought possible. What would you have done in my shoes once my neighbor's angelic mother showed up? Would you have held firm on the eviction? Or would you have done what I did?